Progressive is America's #1 motorcycle insurer, so we understand motorcycles. No, really, we have a bike translator.
Okay, so this bike feels like he's capable of a little more than just trips to the convenience store. Oh, also, he wants to let you know that you can buy a gallon of ice cream instead of a pint every time. Those are his words. So he said roughly like, blink the last wheel. It doesn't really translate, but the way he said it was super funny.
Get 24/7 roadside assistance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Roadside assistance subject to policy terms and limits and may require comprehensive coverage.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the magnificent Monday edition of the Yard. It's good to be back in Starkville. Had a great day in Atlanta on Friday. I guess it was Thursday, whatever day it was. It all runs together after a while. Had a great day in Atlanta, and then had some trouble up in South Carolina with my car. Ultimately had to replace it. Didn't expect that. Didn't expect to get in the car and drive into South Carolina and having to buy a car, but I did. Very grateful that I have the ability to do so. There have been a lot of times in my life I'd have just been stuck. But very thankful to my friends Neil and Laura Kemp and Laura's son Tyler that helped me kind of navigate through all that. Had a great night of recovery Friday night. I guess Saturday was the difficult day. But anyway, we got it handled. Got a new Mustang, and now we're back in Starkville. And so many of you were so kind to me. You know, I put on Facebook I was having some trouble. Not that I was seeking attention, but I had people that called me that lived in the area and said, "Hey, Steve, I'll bring you back." You know, I'm like, wow. You know, it was that simple. You know, it was basically tow the car back, get it fixed up there, and it's a repair that I'd already paid to have done recently. And so it's like, hey, how much more money am I going to invest in this car? I love the car. She was a 2005 Mustang, limited edition, with 340,000 miles on her. That's right, 340,000 miles and a couple of those trips to Omaha in that car. But, you know, there's a lot of problems with it. I mean, you know how it is when you got an older car. You're always doing something. But so we got a new Mustang. Under warranty, so if anything goes wrong here in the next few years, Ford will have to pay for it. So there we go. But again, very appreciative of all of you that reached out to check on my well-being. But got it up there, and they told me, hey, baby it till you get home. I said, I'm 7 hours from home. They said, you're not going to make it. Car's not safe to drive. So it is what it is. Last thing I envisioned doing was buying a new vehicle, but I have one. And so happy to have it. And looking forward to packing that car and heading out to Arizona here in a few weeks. How about that? Say, Steve, you're driving? Yes, I'm driving. That's what I do. Every Mississippi State baseball game, football game, home and away, I drive. And I don't have an expense account. My expense account is Steve Robertson, Inc. So we pay to go cover the Bulldogs. And appreciate your guys for all your support. If you're not a subscriber of genespage.com, we are the Mississippi State affiliate for 247 Sports. And I would encourage you to be a member for a few reasons. Number one, we are the best thing going when it comes to Mississippi State coverage of athletics in every sport. We've got a great team. We absolutely do. Absolutely killer. But also, too, and when I read social media commentary, I know immediately this person doesn't subscribe to our website, because they are blissfully ignorant about a lot of things. And I don't mean that in a negative way. And one of those things is last night's draft. It's like we have been, between Robbie and I, we have talked extensively about Jett Williams. And then I get on these Facebook groups and I see, well, do you think he's going to come to school? Or I don't understand why we recruit these guys. You know, the bottom line is, if you had been a member of Gene's Page, nothing that happened last night in the draft would have been a surprise to you. In fact, everything went to script, and we're going to talk about that in the first segment of the show. Got a pretty good, cool top 10 list for you as well. We're going to talk also about the 2018 coaching cycle. A lot of discussion when all that happened, that this was one of the best coaching cycles in recent history. And I'm going to tell you, looking back in hindsight, with it freezing cold takes, they could have a field day with a lot of things that were said in the media about some of those coaching hires. We're going to go look at that in depth today. We're also going to talk a little bit about realignment. Some things that are kind of out there that I think are very important to discuss, some things to watch. Before we get into all that, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I'm going to get in there this week because I like to be happy. I like to do the things that bring me joy. And Bulldog Burger Company is one of those. It seems like a small thing. It's not. It's amazing how a good quality meal can kind of turn your day or your week around. You kind of look forward to that. So I'm going to get Bulldog Burger Company, probably get it to go. It's a busy week for me, as most weeks are. Bulldog Burger Company, you can get it to go. You can get it in-house. You're going to be happy either way. If you're in Starkville, let me encourage you to go try the new patio area. They've done some renovations there, kind of some minor renovations to kind of make it a nicer place to eat outside. I love the place. I think you will too. Right here on University Drive. 2 other great locations to serve you. Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, and then the newest one, Lake Harbor Drive there in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Have the spring rolls. I had somebody hit me up on social media, and it seems like every week people hit me up on Bulldog Burger Company. They'd never been before. They gave it a chance, had the spring rolls, immediately felt better looking, looked in a rearview mirror, didn't recognize themselves. Also had the pimentology add bacon. That will put some hair on your chest. Love that place. Love the fact that I can get usually more than what I pay for. That's not always the case when you go other places. Go to Bulldog Burger Company. You'll be glad you did. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to eat. A great place to recreate. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, our top story. The first 2 rounds of the Major League Baseball draft are now in the books. Now, at 1 p.m. today, rounds 3 through 10 will take place, and then tomorrow, beginning at 1 p.m. Central Time, 11 through 20. We expect business to really pick up tomorrow. Could see Brad Cumbus drafted today, and we're kind of holding our breath, hoping that a couple of our signees aren't drafted in the early portion of today. But we'll watch it really, really close. I enjoyed the MLB draft, and other people are like, oh, well, this is such a long and drawn-out deal. I think the MLB draft actually moves at the best pace. So rather than having to sit there and watch highlights of some guy from, Illinois State and hear people try to talk intelligently about a guy that was a bit of a reach, the MLB draft moves on. And I think Kyle Peterson, Eduardo Perez, and those guys, Kylie, the whole group there on ESPN do a great job. I don't understand why we don't just go ahead and do the whole thing, though. It's like we get through the first round, then I got to flip over to MLB and hear Tony Vitello talk. And, I guess it's a good coup for those guys to get Tony. But I thought the coverage was really good on ESPN. I thought the MLB coverage was not as good as the ESPN coverage. But I'm happy to be able to watch. All right, so the very first pick of Mississippi State interest, of course, was Jett Williams. Now, that's a surprise to nobody. And he pretty much went where he was projected within a few picks. We have known for the better part of, 3 months, 4 months, that Jett Williams is going to go pro. We've known. Now, he was originally committed to Texas A&M. He flipped to Mississippi State last October, and everybody knew that he was going to be a dude, and he exploded this year. Really had some upward mobility on draft boards because of the year that he had this year. Did really well in workouts. Now, he is a 5'8" guy, so he's not exactly the prospecty-looking shortstop. A lot of people want that bigger guy. They want a guy like Jacob Gonzalez, who's not draft eligible this year. But Jed Williams goes 14th to the New York Mets, their second pick of the first round. And that's a really good get. And a lot of people say, hey, the Mets sure are watching us pretty close. And, yeah, it's because you've got a really good area scout for the New York Mets here in Mississippi. So that's not a surprise at all that they would have some interest in Mississippi State players. But all of that said, Jett Williams is gone. He is going to sign. The slot value for that is like $4.25 million. There's the chances of him coming to school are slim. And I have all these people that are tagging me in all these posts and tweeting at me, what are the chances we get Jett Williams? 0, which is what we have said for weeks. The kid's not coming to school. You say, but Steve, so why do we go recruit those guys? When we recruit them, we don't know that. We don't know that they're going to be first rounders. And that the truth of the matter is, you go out and you try to get as many of those guys as you can, and maybe a couple of those guys come to school and they're difference makers on the college level. So we really don't want to go through a situation where we're signing a class that doesn't have extensive Major League Baseball interest. Now, you look at Vanderbilt, they lose 5 signees to the draft. LSU, I guess 4 or 5 for them. I think that's probably skewing a little bit too far. And that's the big thing. People are like, oh, well, this guy's going to pull out of the draft at Vanderbilt. Well, then they have 5 guys taken. And so I think that's the extreme to the wrong side. And I see all these people say, well, this is why LSU works so hard in the portal. Well, that's true too, but also I think it's important to note that some of this portal class from LSU is likely to be drafted today. Now, the way things work nowadays, there used to be the 40-round draft. Now it's a 20-round draft. So you've got to hit on your picks. And by and large, with rare exception, the guys that were drafted last year signed. There were some that didn't. Jed Fabian didn't. Of course, Kumar Rocker didn't. He improves his draft status where he moves up from, I'm talking about Rocker here, he moves from 11 to 3. But his bonus structure is exactly the same. Rocker has already agreed to terms last night. And so basically he gets pretty much identical slot values he got last year. But the Rangers also save about $2 million because the slot value was over $7 million. So it's $2 million in savings. You say, well, Steve, how does that work? Well, because the bonus pool is kind of set. Each team has a bonus pool of which they can use. Used to, it was just kind of wild, wild west. So the slot values are assigned for each pick, and that's part of the collective bargaining agreement. That's something they do with the Players Association. And so that $2 million savings kind of moves forward. What that means is let's say that the Rangers need some additional money. Maybe they have to pay over slot value for their second or third or fourth round picks. Well, now they've got $2 million added in many respects. Instead of allocating all his funds to Kumar Rocker, they've given him, $5.2 million, so they can use that $2 million to kind of spread out and pay over slot to make sure they get their guys to camp. It's an important aspect of this. So I say that to kind of educate a little bit. It's not like they're just trying to screw the guy. And that was the thing we had a discussion yesterday. Somebody brought up, well, you don't want to get off on the wrong foot with your first-round picks. And I reminded them that 3 of the top 7 picks in last year's draft all signed for about $2 million less than slot value. There's always some savings there. It's a very complicated and convoluted process. But Jett Williams will probably get close to slot because, he has leverage. He says, I'll just go to Mississippi State. But I don't think he improves his draft stock. I mean, it's like, he's drafted middle of the first round. Even if he plays his way up, maybe you're talking $1 million, but that's a pretty big risk to take when you have life-changing money, kind of across the table. You just got to sign a piece of paper, and then you and your family's life is changed forever. So Jett Williams will not be a Mississippi State player. And there are always those that say, Steve, you never know. No, you're right. You never know. But the reality of it is chances of that happening are slim and none. Okay, the number 34th pick in the draft went to Landon Sims. Now, that is a first-round competitive balance pick. I believe it's correct. It is a first-round pick. At the end of the first round, there's like some comp picks and things of that nature. And so he goes 34 to Diamondbacks, who had a great draft last night. Later in the draft, they picked up Ivan Melendez from Texas. That's going to be pretty awesome there, right? I think Landon and Ivan will have some things to say. But all that said, Mississippi State's first-round selection streak extends to 4 years. You go from Ethan Small to Jordan Westberg and Justin Foscue in 2020. And last year, of course, Will Bednar. And then now Landon Sims. So 4 consecutive years that a current Mississippi State player drafted in the first round. I think it's also interesting to kind of point out, too, and I guess JT Ginn was part of that deal, too, but you start looking at this thing, it's pretty crazy to think about. The majority of these guys that are going in the first round for Mississippi State are pitchers. And Scott Foxhall has had some people over the course of the last year, and some of it is warranted, right? Some of it's injury-related, but we didn't have good pitching this year. But, look at what we're doing. We're getting guys to the major leagues. Guys are coming to Mississippi State, getting life-changing money, beginning their professional careers. Landon Sims is a guy, too, that had the injury this year, and nobody's scared of Tommy John anymore. People always bring it up on the broadcast because you never know. Not everybody comes back better, and that's all true. The day after he hurt himself, I talked to 2 Major League Baseball scouts at the game at Tulane, 2, and I said, I still think he's a first-rounder, regardless of the injury. What do you guys think? Both guys said I would take him in the first round. Both. And now here we are. The draft is here. It's no longer, a projection. It's no longer somebody's opinion. It's a reality. Landon Sims, first-round draft pick, Mississippi State. So now we got to update that graphic in the outfield. And I hope we do that every year. Don't you? It's a really cool thing to be able to do that. So Landon will now wait for assignment. And, still got some rehabbing to do and things like that. Of course, he won't pitch in the short season this year. He's done as far as throwing in a competitive game until next year. And we hope that he is at full strength when he returns.
If you're willing to look for it, Bulldog fans, there's always a reason to celebrate. There's good in every day. Maybe you're celebrating a friend for their promotion, a new baby, perhaps a wedding, any major life accomplishment. Celebrate yourself by keeping the couch warm. How about that? It's no easy feat, especially if it's a big couch. Or maybe you just want to celebrate living in 2022, where you can get beer, wine, and spirits delivered directly to your door from Drizzly in under 60 minutes without leaving that big couch we were talking about. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Get your favorite drinks delivered today. It's very, very simple, very, very easy to do. Again, that's DRIZLY.com. Find something to celebrate. There's so many great things in life. There's a lot of joy out there. And sometimes celebrating with friends over a nice adult beverage is the way to go. Again, that's drizzly.com, DRIZLY.com.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
Hey, remember how 20 years ago I switched to Progressive? Well, now it's the future, and I used all those savings to buy this new hologram phone. Because, it's the future, and everything is holograms now.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.
The number 55 pick in the draft went to Logan Tanner, the fourth catcher taken in the draft. That's about what we thought. We knew he would be among the first catchers taken. You have Bravado from Georgia Tech that went to the Mets there at 11, and then a little bit later you had the guy from Louisville. And so about what we expected. Spent some time talking to Delana Tanner. This was back, senior day weekend. Kind of comparing notes with her just to kind of see what she was hearing. And I was hearing from some of my cross-checker friends and scout friends probably a second rounder. Had he had the big offensive year, perhaps he moves into the first round. But there was some discussion last year that he would be a potential first rounder. I don't know that he had a first-round quality year, and I think most people would agree. Even Logan probably didn't have a first-round year offensively. Power numbers were down, RBI numbers were down. But the guy's an elite receiver, and so we knew that he would go pretty early. And so it's been a very, very stressful process, obviously, for that family because, you hear all these things. All these people are like, hey, we love you. We'd love to see you here. We'd love to have you as a part of our program. But until they pick you, none of that really matters. And so Logan goes 55, which makes him the highest rated catcher, the highest pick ever for a Mississippi State catcher. People say, Steve, well, Ed Easy went pretty early. Ed went 61. Now, what's interesting is back then, of course, we had an expanded draft back then. 61 was actually in the first round because of the fact there were so many comp picks allotted that particular year. Logan's drafted 6 spots higher, but goes in the second round because we have a more abbreviated draft and there were less comp picks. So that's pretty high cotton there when you think about where LT was drafted. And a great guy in every aspect. And so he'll do well. The pride of Lucedale, Mississippi, played at George County High School. We knew that he was going to be a dude when he got here. And I think all told, it's pretty safe to say Logan Tanner was very good for Mississippi State. Mississippi State very good for Logan Tanner. Slot value there is $1.7 million, something like that. So Landon's going to sign for somewhere around $2 million. Landon not too terribly far behind. So life-changing money for those two young men, and very happy for them and their families. And now we kind of turn our attention to today. Now, perhaps the biggest win for Mississippi State yesterday is the fact that Bradley Lofton, left-handed pitcher from DeSoto Central, was not drafted yesterday. Now, slot values after the second round dipped below $800,000. A lot of discussion that Lofton was going to require 7 figures or more. I had somebody tell me last week probably around 1.5. And again, that's just a guesstimation, right? I mean, those are people in Major League Baseball circles and said, yeah, probably going to need somewhere around 1.5 million. Now, slot values are dipping under 800,000. That doesn't mean there won't be somebody that'll pay over slot for him. Like, look at the Texas Rangers, right? They got $2 million extra to work with now. And so what if they identify him as their guy, a left-handed young starter? They could afford to pay above. Let's say the slot value's $750,000. Well, they got $2 million to work with. So if he wants $1.5 million, they can give him $1.5 million if they're so inclined. So we're not out of the woods yet. Dakota Jordan, not drafted yet. Now, some of these guys that have an asking price north of 7 figures, most teams at this point will just say, we're going to just move on. There are other players out there we can get for better value. Not going to make the type of investment. But we're going to have to sweat it out a little bit today. Colby Holcomb is another that had a pretty lofty asking price, and people don't want to make this stuff public, nor should they, right? That's another one we're sweating out. So I feel like if we can get maybe through the first 5 rounds, I think we can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. So 3 rounds today, I think if Holcomb and Lofton aren't taken, I think we can begin to think, okay, there's a good chance these guys are going to be on campus next year. They're on campus now, but we'd like for them to stay and suit up wearing the M over S. But there's a handful of guys out there that today we'll be watching really, really close. And again, until it's all over and done with, you can't really breathe that big sigh of relief. Now, what's interesting, too, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as an indictment on anybody's talent, some of these guys may end up being undrafted. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't get calls from teams. It doesn't mean they're not good enough to play in the professional ranks. What that means is they couldn't come to terms with a team. When guys are drafted this early, there is already an agreement in principle. May not be anything in writing, but they're like, hey, we want to draft you here. Are you willing to take $1 million as signing bonus? And the kid's like, yeah, I'll absolutely do it. Well, then they're picked, and then we get it done. But if a team contacts, you say Bradley Lofton and say, hey, listen, we got $1.1 million, will you go? And he goes, nah, I need more than that. Well, then he continues to kind of drop down the draft boards. It doesn't mean that he's not a first or second round talent, because he is. And so it's important to kind of understand how this draft process works. It's not like it was even 3 years ago, where you just draft everybody and then kind of figure it out over the course of the summer. I had one scout tell me that it's pretty much understood, especially in the first 10 rounds, if you go stand on a table for a kid, he better sign, because you don't have an unlimited amount of picks. You don't have this huge minor league system anymore. So you can't just draft guys and follow them the way you used to. You got to draft them and hope that brings them to the table. And so anybody that was drafted last night has already agreed in principle in many respects. They've already given some assurances to the big league club. Yes, I will sign for this. And you're going to start seeing some deals announced here in the next day or two, like Kumar Rocker. Of course, that was announced last night. And I'm sure that's a deal that was made prior to the draft. It's like, hey, if you're there at number 3, we're going to take you. What's it going to take to get you to sign? Here's our situation. And then the two sides come to some sort of an agreement. So you can rest assured those conversations have already been made, or already been taking place with between player, agent, and team, and family, parents, girlfriends, whoever's. But the bottom line is that anybody taking this early is expected to forego college or any eligibility they have remaining. All right, so what does this mean for our current players? We knew Landon and LT would go early. They did. Now, who could potentially go today? You know, Brad Cumbest could go today. Cameron James could go today. Brad is a guy, too. You talk to some scouts, they're enamored by him. I had one scout tell me, he's 1,000 at-bats behind the rest of the class. And he's going to get those in the minors. And provided he stays healthy, he's going to take a big jump. He took a big jump for us this year when he fully focused on baseball. So Brad will go, and Brad will sign, barring something unforeseen. I think there's a chance Brad goes today. I think there's a chance that Brad goes today. Could Cameron James go today? And that kind of remains to be seen, too. I had some people tell me he had an asking price probably a little higher than would get, but we are still well within that range. So that's another name to watch today. I think Luke Hancock could be a back of the draft type guy. Luke doesn't project well, and that's not an indictment on Luke. It's just the reality of the situation. He's played first base because he is a team first guy and has done a good job over there for us. He really has. I mean, I think really saved a couple of errors in 2021. The year we won the National Championship, Luke's been outstanding. I mean, you look at how he's played this year. Really played well. If he returns, he's going to slide back to catcher. And him and Hypel will probably split those duties over the course of the week. But, Hypel was a guy, too, that was ranked in the top 250 according to Jim Callis. I was told by somebody extremely close to Ross that, hey, he's going to go to school. And has kind of let teams know that. Didn't go to pre-draft workouts and things of that nature. Didn't go to the combine. And said he was going to need life-changing money in order to go. I don't know that he projected to get that, but he kind of removed all doubt. And you've seen the videos out there. He had a big tank working out the other day, BP, with the Bulldogs out at Duty Noble. And then there's Girangelo, the ambidextrous pitcher. I was told yesterday it'd be a surprise if he went early. There are a lot of people that there's the novelty of the whole thing, right? He can pitch with both arms successfully. Doesn't have elite size. Could be a guy that's drafted late. He is a native of Curacao, and so, what does that mean? What does that mean, kind of moving forward? I think it's part of the deal with him. I think we're probably going to be okay, and that was really the big concern. Like, it didn't feel like last year. I mean, last year you had 4 guys you were certain were going to get drafted. And then I was hearing kind of leading up to the draft that Walling wanted to be a starter and wasn't getting the interest from teams in that regard. They wanted him to be a reliever. So he wanted to come to Mississippi State and prove that he could do it. He didn't do that. All right, now he's in the portal. I don't think that he's a guy that gets drafted this year. But this time last year, we were like, there's the big 4 there. If we get any of those 4, we're going to feel great. We do get the one, and we really get nothing out of it this year. This year, there just didn't seem to be the same level of concern. And I don't think that that's necessarily a reflection on the talent of the class. I just think you've got some guys that probably need a little more seasoning before they make the jump to pro ball. And I think there's some other guys out there that could absolutely have been drafted last night. They just had an asking price north of what some teams were willing to pay at that point in the draft. So as great as yesterday was, because we knew Jett Williams was going to go, and then we got a chance to cheer for our guys, LT and Landon, as they go on the first day of the draft, which is what you always want, right? You want your veterans drafted high, and you want your prospects, your signees drafted low, if drafted at all. So yesterday was the best case scenario for us. I wrote that last night before I went to bed. Today will be a very interesting day. Today is the day that we've all kind of been worried about. Now, again, we don't have the same level of worry maybe today that we did last night as it relates to maybe Bradley Laughlin and some others. But that guy could be a big part of our program. I've had one cross-checker tell me that he is a guy that could start for Mississippi State on Sundays right now. Right now. We talk about having an influx of talent in the pitching staff. Well, it's on the way. How much of it gets to campus will kind of be determined by what happens today. That's how important today is for us. And then you look at Bill Knight. Bill could be a guy that's drafted tomorrow. We really want Bill Knight to go undrafted. Or we want Bill Knight to have maybe be drafted exceptionally late. And maybe you could get some NIL assurances to kind of get him to campus. But, the risk you run, too, is he won't have any leverage, right? R.J. Yeager's a guy, too, that was in a similar situation. R.J. will be drafted probably today. I suspect somebody will draft him and then pay him under slot to give them some room to maybe pay some high school guys to come to college, to avoid going to college. And I think Bill Knight's in a similar situation that R.J. was in last year. He's like, I want to do this, but if I get drafted this year, I might want to take it. And so I think if Bill Knight is drafted, there's a good chance that he doesn't come to Mississippi State. So we're sweating that out too. Now, Nate Chester's draft eligible. We're not worried about that. Colton Ledbetter is a guy that is not draft eligible. And I got clarification on that yesterday because I I wasn't exactly sure. I found out he was actually 20. You have to be 21 or 3 years removed from high school as a college player in order to enter the draft. And so Ledbetter, and there's no entering, they just can't pick you, but Ledbetter not draft eligible. So we do expect to get him here next year. So now we just kind of wait. And, waiting's the hardest part. When we come back on Wednesday, we'll have a really good idea what this roster is going to look like. Who's returning? Who's coming to class? I think all that is something that this is the week. This is the big event we've been waiting for. First there was the July 1st transfer portal deadline in order for spring sport athletes to be eligible to play next year, unless they were a grad transfer, had to be in the portal by January 1st or by July 1st. Okay, so that was a big milestone. We passed that. This is the biggest one. And once we get through Tuesday, I think you're going to see a pretty exciting game of musical chairs as a lot of teams and players kind of come to terms with transfers. And I think it's going to happen very, very quickly. There's some names out there you guys are aware of. Paul Skeens, of course, just finished up a Team USA baseball, still expected to take a visit to Arkansas and then make a decision. That guy's a difference maker. We absolutely want him. That guy could be your Friday night guy. Maybe you move Cade Smith to Saturday. I'm remiss by not mentioning Preston Johnson. That's another guy too. There's a lot of these pitchers from state, despite the fact that they had kind of up and down results, still getting the interest from teams. Parker Sinnett's not healthy. He will be. I mean, he doesn't have anything that's going to derail his career or anything. But that's a guy too because of the velo and the spin rate on that breaking ball. He's a guy that's gotten some interest too. You just got to find a way to control it and harness it. I thought at times he did pretty good last year, and other times he didn't. But that's a guy too. Preston Johnson, Brandon Smith, all those guys may have a decision to make. I suspect most of that happens tomorrow, which will add a little intrigue to it too. And if I'm Preston Johnson, I'm a Brandon Smith, if I get drafted, I probably go, to be quite honest with you. Especially if you're Brandon, because Brandon's running out of eligibility. Preston still has a couple years to work with. But it's going to be a different deal. Like today, you're mainly you're cheering for your current players because if Brad and Cam get drafted today, they're going to sign and go begin a pro baseball career. And you know what? We're grateful for their contributions to Mississippi State baseball. So you're cheering for those guys, and then you're kind of cheering against the signees. And of course, I know all of that is selfish. This is a show about Mississippi State. What's best for Mississippi State may not necessarily be what's best for a signee, right? And I think if you're Bradley Lofton, you begin to look at this and say, okay, I could go to Mississippi State and play a couple of years and then have the opportunity to be a potential first rounder. And so you look at what Kumar Rocker did. I'm not in any way comparing Bradley Lofton to Kumar Rocker. That wouldn't be fair to Bradley. But my point is, look at that $7 million slot value for the third pick. And so Bradley Lofton, let's say he gets offered $1 million. That guy could come in here and pitch a couple of years and go to Omaha and then have the opportunity to get multi-million dollars as a signing bonus. That's something you got to think about. And then you think about all the taxes and all the stuff that go along with that too. I mean, I guess, I don't know everybody's situation, but taxes on $1 million, you probably only clear about $600,000. And so when you start looking at that over the totality of your life, it would give you a head start at life. Like say for an example, like if Cam James got that kind of money, what gives him kind of a running start at life? He can pay off his student loans. He can get himself a nice vehicle and maybe, kind of get a down payment on a house, But if you're a high school guy and you still have the ability to go to college and improve your draft stock, maybe that money doesn't seem quite as significant because you simply have more time to prove yourself. So again, it'll be an eventful day today. And again, all the fun starts at 1 p.m. Central. We'll have full coverage over at genespage.com. Be sure and come check us out. All right, time for today. Before we move on, don't forget to go to Prime Shrimp. You only got a couple weeks left in this promotion. PrimeShrimp.com. I love it. You'll love it. If you haven't already tried it, give it a try. Go to PrimeShrimp.com today. Pick out a couple flavors. Have it shipped in. It'll be extremely well packaged. It'll be cool. It'll survive the dog days of summer, even if it has to sit outside all day. You open it up, you get those cool little pouches, very trim, easy to store pouches in your freezer. They don't take up a lot of room. And it's ready to cook shrimp. You don't have to peel it. You don't have to devein it. You don't have to pull the tails off. And I hate having to do that. You say, Steve, it's not a big deal. It is. It is a big deal. It's not, but it is. They make it so incredibly easy. This ready-to-cook shrimp is so perfect because you can put on a pot of water to boil, bring it to a bowl, drop those shrimp in, 10 minutes later, you're ready to eat. Right? How cool is that? 4 great flavors to choose from. I am very partial to the French Quarter Alfredo. You may feel differently. Try them all. Find your own favorites. Go to primeshrimp.com today and use promo code Boneyard to save $20 off your first order. Again, primeshrimp.com, promo code Boneyard. All right, today's top 10 list brought to you by closewithblair.com. You know Blair Chandler. He's my friend. He's your friend. Guy's a friend in the business, right? That's one thing, too. You know, when you have troubles in life, it's great to have somebody that knows the ins and outs of convoluted processes, somebody that's been through the wars. You know, for us, things seem like a really big deal, but for a guy like Blair Chandler, he's like, oh, yeah, we've done these loans 1,000,000 times. That's very reassuring to hear. So stick with the winners. Stick with a mortgage professional like Blair Chandler. Go to closewithblair.com today. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair.com today. And let him know you heard about him on the Boneyard, and he's going to pay for your appraisal. It's about a $500 value. So maybe you're looking to refinance, and rates are going up, right? Rates are going up. Maybe you can't afford to wait much longer. Maybe you need some cash out, you need some home improvements. Maybe you got a wedding to pay for. I don't know what your situation is, but maybe you need easy access to cash without having to pay a high interest rate. Blair can help you with that. Or perhaps maybe the dream of home ownership is something that's eluded you. Blair can help you with that too. Whether it be purchases, refis, second mortgages, HELOCs, whatever you want. He can do it all. He has been there, seen it all, done it all. In 21 years, there hasn't been much that surprised Blair. Works at Fairway Mortgage, recently voted #1 in customer satisfaction and mortgage loan origination. Blair in the top 1% close ratio in the country in back-to-back years. Coffees for closers, Blair drinks a lot. Closewithblair.com. Be sure and check him out today. All right, top 10 list. We're doing modern rock today, and this band absolutely rocks. I listened to them the entire way home from South Carolina, all 7 hours. I listened to the catalog, listened to a lot of songs that I knew, put on some albums I was unfamiliar with. They have a new single they dropped, absolutely incredible. It's the band Beartooth. You say, Steve, I've never heard of Beartooth. Well, shame on you. They're kind of a modern day, they started out kind of as a metalcore punk band. They've kind of transitioned a little bit. A little more of an industrial type sound. And it's kind of got melodic choruses, and then there's some aggressive versing. I really like Beartooth. I've liked them from the beginning. I've seen them live multiple times. And Caleb, the singer, was kind of an overweight guy. He has gotten in shape. He is now clean and sober. Looks great, sounds great. Very happy that he's a part of the recovery community now. But a lot of his pain has kind of been interjected into some of these lyrics. You know, he talks a lot about the things he's dealt with. And I read an interview with him a while back. He goes, listen, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm trying to heal myself. And so his art is one of those things that helps him do so. So the band Beartooth, they have 4 albums out. And it's interesting that all 4 of the albums, one-word titles. Kind of like my books. If you've noticed, all of my books, all the sports books, are 2-word titles. So we're going to jump into this, and real quickly here. The albums, they began in 14. Their first album debuted in 14, album called Disgusting. In 2016, the album Aggressive came out. 18, Disease. In 2021, Below. And then it just recently, about a week ago, released a new single. Not sure what that's attached to just yet, but a really, 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 really good rock band. That's one of the things I hear a lot. Some of my critics will say, well, Steve's like lost in the 80s. And I am in many respects. But I love the new stuff too. And Beartooth's one of my favorite bands of the last decade. New rock bands. I love the new blood when they actually have some gumption. You know, there's a lot of bands out there that it's almost like a record company has decided, well, we got to release something. Beartooth is just different. They're a little bit different. They're kind of true to the old school. They don't play the classic rock sound. But there is an edge to them. There are meaningful lyrics. You know, we're not just singing about nothing but a good time. We're also, too, not... there's some grunge elements in this, too, but I just think Beartooth is kind of in their own lane. So Beartooth, top 10. And some of these are deeper tracks because I'm a real fan, and maybe you're different. Number 10, to me, I think is a great place to start. And it is kind of a little more rock radio friendly. I listen to Sirius XM Octane most of the time, and then of course Hair Nation, sometimes Ozzy's Boneyard. But the song Threat to Society is a great place for us to start this list. And I think it's one of those songs too that, you know, if I started you off with something a little bit more in your face, you might say, Steve, this is a little bit too aggressive for me. I think this is a really good introduction to Beartooth. There's a melodic portion to this that I think really stands apart. Number 9, this one is really more in your face, kind of more modern punk. It's, you know, these guys are from Ohio, but this sounds a little bit like the New York punk scene. Like there's some elements of this. It's kind of like if punk grew up a little bit, but maintained its true identity. The song is I Won't Give It Up. I love this song. I love how aggressive the guitar is. And, of course, the vocal is always really, really good. Number 8, this is a song about sobriety and recovery, but it can really kind of be equated to anything in your life. You know, like whether it be a bad relationship, whether it be, you know, some trauma in your life, whatever. The song is The Past is Dead. And sometimes we want to go perform an autopsy on it, do the pathology and all that kind of stuff and never move on from it. And I'm a person sometimes that's dealt with that too. And I think this is one of those songs that's kind of a good reminder. It's like, that's all behind us. You can't change it. And one of the most profound things that anybody's ever told me, it actually happened on genespage.com. And it was when a friend of mine died in recovery or whatever, and some people that didn't know that I was in sobriety, so I shared a little bit of that. And this person shared with me, it said, you know, we can't change the past, but we can change what it means. And I think that song is kind of indicative of that. It's behind us. We can learn from it and move on, but we can't go back and replace it. What's done is done. Number 7, I like this one a lot, and this one was one they played on the radio a good bit. Love the vocal on it. It's You Never Know, and it's another one that just kind of gets in your face a little bit. I think the music itself is maybe a little more rock radio friendly. Vocally, very aggressive, especially in the chorus. Speaking of aggressive, that's our number 6 song. I guess that's, I'm losing my train of thought here, but it is I guess it was the first track off the Aggressive album of the same name. But this is when Beartooth had kind of hit the scene with that Disgusting album, and people were like, well, these guys are a little bit different. And then, okay, are they a flash in the pan? And then they followed it up, you know, with Aggressive and Disease, and I think it's one of those things that people realized that there was just truly something to this band. Lyrical content, good riffing, and I think Aggressive was really maybe a bit of a middle finger to the critics, I guess, and maybe that's not the PG-13 way to say it, but I think it was like, you know what, we're here to stay, and I think as long as you've got a great singer-songwriter, no matter the genre, you generally are there to stay. Number 5, the song is called Rock is Dead, but it's a bit of a misnomer because the chorus of the song is, if rock and roll's dead, you can kill me right now. And that's kind of how I feel too. But so it's not basically saying rock is dead as if, you know, like Paul McCartney and Gene Simmons and other people have said that rock is dead. I think Beartooth is a testament that rock is not dead, that there are some new bands coming up that are being innovative. They're not just kind of regurgitating or rehashing the old things. And there are some bands out there, of course. I know many of you love some of these bands. They say, oh, they sound just like Led Zeppelin, or they sound just like Motley Crue. And I think that's really cute. But I think in order for rock music to really be innovative, we have to have some new ideas. And I think that's what Beartooth brings. But Rock is Dead is just a tremendous song. As a matter of fact, that's the first song I listened to in my new car. If rock and roll's dead, you can kill me right now. Number 4. For a while there, this was probably my second favorite Beartooth song. And it's a song called Sick of Me. And it's not you being sick of me, even though maybe you are. It's like me as a person. And I equate a lot of this, of course, to recovery. And, of course, Caleb being in recovery, I think that's part of it. I'm sick of the person that I used to be. You know, it's like I'm sick of all this, sick of all this. It's like I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? I'm just tired of all this. I'm sick of the mistakes that I made. I'm sick of continuing to repeat that pattern of behavior. And so, to me, it's kind of an uplifting song, even though it's about maybe some negative stuff. But, again, a very aggressive vocal in this one. Number 3, this is one of those songs that means an awful lot to me. There are some songs that are just kind of part of the soundtrack of your life. And I feel like in some ways that this was kind of a message to me, and it's a song called Hated. Who knew you'd be hated for being who you are and be a big target for all the insecure? I love the song. I get chills even saying that to you guys. I mean, it's like you live your life the best you can, and if you live your life with conviction and you actually really stand for something, you're going to make enemies. And you know what? I never want to be one of those people that everybody likes. I just don't, because of the fact that if that's the case, if you're a people pleaser to that extent, that means you're not being true to yourself. And I think that's what the song Hated is really about, is you be true to your authentic self. And if people don't like it, then that's okay. That's a them problem, not a you problem. I'm not running for public office. I don't need everybody to like me. I'm just going to be myself. All right, number 2, and I know for those of you that are fans of Beartooth, you're going to say, Steve, this is a bit premature. It's not. It's not premature. The number 2 song is the brand new single, Riptide. I know some people are thinking, well, Steve, what about Body Bag or Keep Your American Dream? And I know that those are really popular among the fan base. I'm going with Riptide. I like the direction this band is taking. And this is another song, kind of with some recovery principles in it. And that doesn't mean that you got to be an alcoholic or a drug addict or somebody in recovery to appreciate this song. This song absolutely rips from start to finish. And again, I love kind of the little industrial overlay with this. It kind of ties it all together. There is a very aggressive breakdown guitar-wise in this thing that really makes me put my fist in the air. I dig it. Riptide. And again, I don't know if there's a new album coming or they just had a bonus single laying around. They released a video with this. I absolutely love this song. Lyrically, I think it is absolutely incredible. And it's really about you taking care of you. It's like, you know what, I'm not going to romanticize the riptide that tried to drown me. It's like, whether it be drugs, alcohol, negative relationships, whatever's going on in your life. It's basically, I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm done with all that. I'm putting that into my past. And so I think it's a song of empowerment in many respects. And musically, it is on another level. I absolutely love it. And I've shared it with some friends, and they love it too. I've had a couple people say, well, I like it a lot. No, you don't like it a lot. You love it. You just don't know it yet. But I dig the song. I think that if you know Beartooth at all, maybe you're unfamiliar with this single, maybe you hadn't downloaded it yet, let me encourage you to do so. Number 1, though, the one that started it all. And I don't know that they can top this one. And in some ways, you look at it and say, wow, they peak with the first single, Steve? Well, I mean, Guns N' Roses had Welcome to the Jungle, right? And they still put together a lot of great tracks behind it. But In Between is your number 1 song. And one of the things that I loved about this, number 1, the bass line I think is infectious. But you have, again, these really aggressive verses, and then you get to this melodic chorus. And it's just one of those things, it just works so well together. The composition of the song, is in my mind, is absolutely incredible. And I think you're going to enjoy this song, too. If you're unfamiliar with it, check it out. And again, listen, Beartooth isn't for everybody, okay? They're not Slayer, okay? They're not some death metal band that you're not going to be able to make out the lyrics. You're going to be able to understand most of it. I mean, Caleb does some shouting at times. It makes it a little difficult to figure out lyrics. But there is just something about this band that kind of resonates with me. And listen, some of the songs deeper in the catalog, I don't like as much. There aren't any that I just dislike. There are some that I just don't get, and that's probably the case with anybody. I mean, there's not an artist out there that's wrote, winner every time. But if you're looking for a new rock band to get into, you're looking for somebody with a little thump, looking for somebody that might punch you in the face a little bit, and not just get you going and get your heart going, but maybe make you think a little bit, Beartooth just might be the band for you. I know Roy, when he puts this list together, he's going to tell me, I don't really know these guys. And then a month from now, Roy's going to have listened to this list. He's going to be like, dude, we need to go see Beartooth. And you know what, Roy? We do. We do. They're not the Avett Brothers. They're not. These guys are in your face. And I think there is probably a song for everybody. But one of the things I love about Beartooth is they're true to themselves. They're true to their sound. It's like, this is who we are. We're going to make our music. We're not going to go do the power ballad. We're not going to go do something else that we're not. We're not going to do a synth pop song. We're a punk band. We're a metalcore rock band, and that's what we're going to do. And they've had some lineup changes, but of course, the thing about it is, as long as you have the singer, kind of the soul of the band, and somebody that can write some riffs, you generally can pull this thing off. And most of this stuff is self-produced. Caleb does a lot of it himself. So he has a vision in mind for these songs. And so as long as you have that kind of know-how, you generally have some staying power. So if you're unfamiliar with Beartooth, let me tell you, familiarize yourself. And if you've got delicate ears, this probably isn't for you. I don't think any less of you. I don't. As you go get your, soy latte from Starbucks or whatever. But all that said, Beartooth, kind of the, part of the new blood, and I think a band that's going to be around for a while. So be sure and check those guys out. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out and let me know. Better yet, hit up Roy on Twitter at Dogmatic67. That's DAWGMATIC67. You can follow all of our list on Spotify. Just subscribe to Roy. Again, that's Dogmatic67 on Spotify. And then all these top 10 lists will just pop up. We do tweet them out, too. And we do post them on Facebook. And so maybe you need to put your own list together. Our friend Izzy has kind of moved on from this, and that's okay. I mean, he was doing it for free. It's not like I was paying him, which he was kind of doing as a courtesy to you guys. But you can see the list. And we do get a lot of interaction on that. I have a lot of people that message me and tell me that I was wrong about this. And I've had other people to say, hey, Steve, I'm so glad you didn't just go with all the hits. Sometimes I do, but I can tell, like when we did Bullet for My Valentine, I got several messages from people that were just Bullet fans, weren't even Mississippi State people. Somehow our list made the rounds. And a lot of Bullet people were like, I can tell you're a true fan of Bullet because you picked this song or you picked that song. You didn't just do this one. And so I think all that stuff's important too. And again, the gift of music, something that we share together, I think is very important. So there you go. Top 10 Beartooth tracks. All right, this segment of the show brought to you by your friends at Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. And as a matter of fact, they carry all 5 of my books there. So if you haven't completed your collection, you can do that there as you're ordering the latest in Mississippi State merch. While you're in town, go by and see their smiling faces. The entire staff will treat you like family because in their minds you are family. It's as simple as that. Lovely, talented Susie, Miss Kathy Brown, Miss Pam Minyard, the whole crew there. Just great people. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you the phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. In this day and time, anytime we can save you some money, we're happy to do so. Again, that's promo code BSR at campusbookmart.net. Be sure and check them out. Okay, let's talk coaching. Back in 2018, a lot of people in the national sports media kind of lauded the 2018 coaching class. It's one of the best in history. Now, in hindsight, that was incorrect. And it's woefully incorrect. So let me run this list down for you, and we'll go coach by coach here, okay? So Athlon Sports graded the 2018 coaching hires, and there were a lot of them. The number one hire, according to Athlon Sports, was Scott Frost at Nebraska. Left Central Florida. He was a major candidate for the Florida job, but it was pretty much a done deal of him going to Nebraska. Things have not gone well. He got a vote of confidence last year from the AD, 4 consecutive losing seasons, 4-8, 5-7, 3-5, and 3-9. Last year they went 1-8 in the Big Ten. I think Nebraska is an interesting fit in the Big Ten anyway. So this is probably the turn or burn year for Scott Frost. If they don't have a good year this year, he's done. I think he's got to at least get to a bowl game this year. They've won 6 games combined. He has in the last 2 years. He has an overall record at Nebraska at 15-29. A lot of people wondered, with Central Florida, was it too small a sample size? He'd had 2 years. The first year, they go 6-6 and lose their bowl game and finish the year 6-7. Then they go undefeated in 17. Danny White and those guys declared themselves NAFL champions. They won the Peach Bowl and finished number 6 in the AP poll, called themselves NAFL champions. And then Frost leaves to go to his alma mater at Nebraska, and it's been terrible. It's been absolutely terrible. They're 10-25 in the Big Ten over the course of the last 4 seasons. So that number 1 hire has gone over like a lead balloon. The number 2 hire, according to Athlon Sports, was Dan Mullen. Now, on paper, looked to be a great hire. He went 69-46 at Mississippi State, 33-39 in the SEC. And there was a stretch there, where Dan was absolutely outstanding. Most years we were expected to go 8-4 or so. We win 10 back in 14, good number 1 in the country. Then you're 9-4, 6-7, 8-4. But I think when you look at the fact that Dan Mullen had sustained success at Mississippi State, it made sense to maybe award him this number 2 ranking. They hit the ground running at Florida, go 10-3. They go 11-2. Then 8-4, and then 5-6 last year, and he didn't finish out the year. Greg Knox, of course, kind of pushes the Gators to a win over Florida State to get to a bowl game, and then they, I guess they lost to Gasparilla. I can't remember. I can't recall. Maybe they didn't even play the game. But the reality of it is, this did not work out well, and it's crazy to think, Dan Mullen and those guys, 3 consecutive New Year's Six games? 3 consecutive top 15 finishes, and then in 1 year he's done. And it's amazing how that all kind of came to be. Some have suggested there had to be something else. I don't think there's any scandal of that. I could see Dan's mouth getting him in some trouble, with the Bull Gators out there in Florida. But 4 years in, Dan Mullen's out of a job. They've made a coaching change. And more on that a little bit later in this segment. Number 3, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly was working for ESPN after a couple of interesting stints there in the National Football League. Now, Chip Kelly, of these guys, has actually done pretty well. I say pretty well. Last year was decent. He's been there 4 years. They go 3-9, 4-8, 3-4. Of course, 2020 was a crazy year for all of us. I don't know if it's difficult. If you can really, I think it's difficult to judge anybody based on 2020. Last year, they go 8-4 overall. Supposed to play in the Holiday Bowl. It got canceled. So last year, a decent year, 18-25 in 4 years. Now UCLA head of the Big Ten here pretty soon. So, what does that mean? It's difficult to say, but I think Chip's a guy that probably needs to build on last year's success to remain employed. I don't know if we've ever looked at UCLA as like some national power in college football, but considering the losing seasons they've had here as of late, I don't know if that's what we're looking for. But Chip has done decent. Would he be, if you re-ranked him, would he be number 3? No, I don't think so. All right, number 4 on Athlon's list is Jimbo Fisher. Now, Jimbo, of course, won an national title at Florida State with a generational quarterback in Jameis Winston. Had a great 2014 year. They went 13-1. They lose the Rose Bowl, finished 5th in the country. And that's a year removed from winning a national championship. So for a 2-year stretch there, Jimbo goes 27-1. Then it's 10-3, 10-3, and then things start falling apart. And that's the thing about this Florida State thing. 4 consecutive losing seasons now. But, kind of the decline started under Jimbo. Now, Jimbo has gone to A&M, and they have basically been Mississippi State. And have had trouble beating Mississippi State. 9-4, 8-5. They go 9-1 in 2020. That was Kellen Mond's senior year. A lot of arguments. They should have been in the playoff. They finished 4th in the country that year. And then last year, they finally get over the hump and beat Alabama, but the same year they lose to Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. So, 4 winning seasons, 4 bowl games. I would venture to say that they're still maybe underachieving there, but you can't really knock the hire or how Athlon has Jimbo rated. And again, probably one of the only guys on this list that doesn't go into the year having to consider, the fact that they may be on the hot seat. So Jimbo is in no way on the hot seat. The guy that replaced him at Florida State is Willie Taggart, who was ranked 5th, the 5th best hire. And now, knowing what we know now about Willie Taggart, you kind of begin to wonder. He was a recruiting dynamo in many respects, but has not proven to be a very capable head coach. He goes 16-20 at Western Kentucky, back-to-back 7-5 years. They get to the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl there in 2012. Then he goes to South Florida, has a couple of really tough years, 2-10, 4-8, 8-5, and then 10-2 And he parlays that into the Oregon job. They have a 7-5 year there, and the next thing you know, he leaves and goes to Florida State, supposedly his dream job. It lasts 2 years. He goes 9-12. And then, of course, Dan Mullen replaces him. And, really rough years there at Florida State. Well, now he is at Florida Atlantic and has had back-to-back losing seasons there, 5-4 and 5-7. And in 2020, as he replaced Lane Kiffin, they go to the Montgomery Bowl and then lose that. And so Willie Taggart, in his career, 66-73 as a head coach. And the only winning record he has as a coach is that 1 year at Oregon where he's 7-5. Everywhere else in his tenure, he has left for another job or been fired after posting a losing record. And again, you look at hindsight here, it's like sometimes, the numbers are there, we just kind of choose to ignore them. So that while it was great at the number 5 hire, absolutely terrible. The number 6 hire is Joe Moorhead. Lauded as a great hire at the time, but underachieved. Now, at the end of the day, he won both Egg Bowls and he went to back-to-back bowl games. Lost them both. 2018 was a year too. We all felt like with Nick Fitzgerald coming back and being in this RPO offense, so we ought to have been really good. I had an NFL championship caliber defense with 3 first-round draft picks on it. That's part of the deal too. But let's give John Cohen a little credit too. Once we see that this thing is kind of going off the rails, we made the decision to make a move. Rather than kind of wait it out and let it bottom out, we went ahead and made the move. Now Mike Leach is kind of pulling us back up. And again, I think we're going to be good this year. But the issue with Joe was really more about what happened off the field. There was some disciplinary issues within the program. Our culture took a step back. I know some people don't like it when I say that, but that's the reality. You're free to be wrong if you want to be. But we had great culture under Dan Mullen, and we began to kind of lose that under Joe. So Joe is now the head coach at Akron after a pretty successful stint in Oregon with Mario Cristobal, who also makes our list a little bit later. The number 7 hire, which is pretty crazy, was Chad Morris. A lot of people were excited about Chad. Chad was 14-22 at SMU, 2-10, 5-7, and then 7-5, and they make the Frisco Bowl. Which is interesting, And then he goes to Arkansas, and he's 2-10, 2-8. Didn't even survive the year of 2019. He gets hired and is graded as a top 10 hire and wins 4 games and goes winless in the SEC. He is now 18-40 overall as a head coach. So no matter what anybody thought or said, you give this guy the number 7 hire, it's a disaster, man. It's an absolute unmitigated disaster to Arkansas. Sam Pittman's kind of picked up the pieces here a little bit and restored some honor to that Arkansas program. They're not a contender quite yet, but they're certainly a much better team than they were under Chad Morris. Arkansas, in many respects, is a laughingstock. All right, the next guy on the list, and this is a guy that I was really excited about when he was at the University of Houston, is number 8, Kevin Sumlin. I really liked him at Houston. 35-17, and his final year there, he goes 12-1, and they finish in the top 15 in the coaches poll at number 14. He gets a job at A&M, and someone was kind of billed as a Texas forever guy. So when he got that A&M job, it's like, hey, this is a good fit. This is a guy that's recruited exceptionally well in the Houston metro area, knows the state of Texas well. He had some pretty good years there, but not great. And it's like when you look at what Jimbo's doing now, basically you've traded someone for Jimbo and gotten the same results at a much higher price tag. Someone's first year at College Station, they go 11-2, then it's 9-4, 8-5, 8-5, 8-5, 7-5, and then he's gone. That was in 17. He's immediately hired by Arizona, and now he works 3 years in that deal and gets fired too. 5-7, 4-8, then 0-5. It's crazy, when they make the change there. And so Sumlin, no longer a college football coach, now in the USFL, and then goes 3-7 this year for the USFL. And so you begin to kind of look at this and you wonder, was it fool's gold at Houston, or was it a matter of the Peter principle where somebody rises to their own level of incompetence? I think Texas A&M wanted more than what they were getting from someone, but they're getting the same results from Jimbo Fisher. Maybe that's one of the reasons they've gotten so fired up by the NIL. Number 9 on the list, a guy that was also a candidate for the Mississippi State job, some thought we should hire him, is Jeremy Pruitt. former Alabama defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt, goes to Tennessee, thought it was a bad fit. This is a guy, too, that I've been told was extremely unprepared in interviews. And he probably doesn't get the job at Tennessee if Phil Fulmer's not the AD. Phil Fulmer obsessed with Alabama. 18, they go 5-7. They have a good year in 19, go 8-5, and win the Gator Bowl. And then in 3-7 the next year. Next thing you know, there's NCAA scandal that involves Tennessee staffers. That has been relatively a quiet undertaking. You know, they're in no hurry to tell their story, right? And so they just kind of let things go. And so Tennessee is going to see sanctions. They're probably going to be pretty severe, but it's not been something that's dominated the media. Tennessee's done a good job kind of keeping this thing quiet. And nobody's really scared of the NCAA right now, but I still think Tennessee, because of the fact there were coaches involved in these allegations, it's going to be very significant. But Jeremy Pruitt now, rather interesting. Now a defensive analyst for the New York Giants, but I suspect that his head coaching days are likely over. Probably, I would suspect will probably get a show cause when it's all said and done, or at least tagged with the dreaded lack of coaching responsibility, sanction or whatever. All right, number 10 on the list was Steve Campbell, our buddy Steve Campbell, who was at Mississippi Gulf Coast for many years, then went to Central Arkansas, had a good run there, and then was at South Alabama, and now he is out of a job too. An interesting hire, just because Steve was a great coach. You think, okay, we finally get a chance to see him, at the D1 level. And I there were times that I thought Steve could possibly be a Power 5 head coach, but it just hasn't worked out for them. Probably the biggest win they had was the big win over Southern Miss that ultimately led to Jay Hobson being fired at Southern Miss. So Steve Campbell, the number 10 coach, also out of a job. Number 11 on the list, in many respects, probably if we re-ranked it today, he's probably number 1. It's Billy Napier. Billy Napier was hired away from Arizona State to be the head coach at UL Lafayette. They did a great job there. Now he's parlayed that into the Florida job. Pretty impressive run there. Of course, he was linked to the Mississippi State job. His candidacy for our job was greatly exaggerated. Greatly. There were some people that really wanted him to get the job. I was one of them too, because I felt like with his style of offense, we could recruit to that easily within our natural footprint. It was very reminiscent of the Dan Mullen spread them out, run the power game. And so I thought maybe it'd be a seamless transition when you look personnel-wise. But Napier, of course, wasn't the candidate for our job when Joe got the job. Napier was kind of down the list. He hadn't really proven himself yet as a head coach. But now he's the head coach of Florida. And so we'll see how things go. And again, I think Florida will be improved this year. All right, Sonny Dykes, the number 12 coach on the list. Sonny's a guy that gets hired at SMU. He's still there, and he's actually done pretty well. So I would say Sonny's probably – no, he's not there. He left to go to TCU. If you look back in hindsight, maybe he's in the top 5 if you re-rank this list. So 30-18 at SMU, but in 19 they win 10 games. They go 10-3, then 7-3, 8-4, and then he gets a TCU job. And I think Sonny will do well there. I know your former athletic director, Scott Strickland, was kind of enamored with Sonny Dykes. There was a lot of discussion that if Dan Mullen had left when Scott Strickland was here, Sonny Dykes would have been the guy we approached. All right, number 13, and a guy that was clearly undervalued on this list is Mario Cristobal. Goes to Oregon, puts together a couple good years. 9-4 in 18, 12-2 in 19, 4-3 in 2020, and then 10-3 there in 2021. And now he's the head coach at the University of Miami, replacing Manny Diaz. But pretty good stretch there. And back-to-back Pac-12 titles, right? Or maybe 2 out of 3. Yeah, but I mean, this is a guy that has done it at the Power 5 level and had an interesting stretch at Florida International before that, and then he took a job there at Alabama. But I thought when FIU moved away from Mario, I said, who do you guys think you are? I mean, he goes 7-6, 8-5, then he has a bad year at 3-9, and they fire him. And now he's proven to make those guys look pretty silly. But again, pretty good run there at Oregon for Cristobal. And again, now he's a coach at Miami. So it's not like some of the other guys on this where his career is waning. All right, number 14, Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. He was the previous offensive coordinator with Mike Leach there at Washington State. Interesting, to say the least. He's still the head coach at Oregon State. Which maybe says something about their expectations, right? Maybe that does. Jonathan's been there for 4 years. 2-10, 5-7, 2-5, 7-6. They finally get to a bowl game last year. So maybe trending more in the right direction. But 16-28 through 4 years, you got to feel like he's got to win this year or they're probably going to make a change. That would make perfect sense to me. But Jonathan Smith, again, kind of one of the Mike Leach guys as well. Excuse me, that's not right. He was Washington offensive coordinator. Excuse me. With Chris Peterson. My mistake. Don't stop listening. All right, number 15 guy on the list is your buddy Matt Luke, who is now out of coaching. And I understand it's his choice. Obviously, wins a natty with Georgia and says, you know what, I want to be around for my kids. And he was paid a fortune to leave Ole Miss, around $11 million. So he doesn't have to work. He doesn't have to. He can be the dad, and good for him. Didn't do an awful lot. Never had a winning season at Ole Miss. Recruiting was beginning to pick up, and a lot of the players that Lane Kiffin has had some success with in recent years are guys that Matt Luke and his staff recruited. And so, but again, out of coaching, worked out really good for him. Get the interim job at his alma mater, coach for a few years, and get a huge payday, and then now you don't have to work. Number 16 on the list, Josh Hypel from UCF. Of course, he succeeded Scott Frost, and people wondered, well, yeah, but he's playing with Scott Frost players. Well, Scott Frost has proven to be a disaster at Nebraska. Then Hypel does a good job at UCF and gets a job at Tennessee. And they had to probably give him some guarantees and assurances because of the sanctions they're facing. But Hypel's done pretty good. If we're being honest with ourselves, I think Tennessee last year was one of the surprise teams in the league. Offensively, they were much, much better. That's kind of Hypel's bread and butter, right? His offensive play. And there were a lot of people that would kind of pan the hire. I thought it was rather interesting. Tennessee has got to get back to being a national recruiter, and that may be difficult to do, with the sanctions that they're facing. But Josh Hypel, good hire at UCF, good hire at Tennessee. And again, a lot of people didn't express a lot of appreciation for that guy. But he's doing a pretty good job under some difficult circumstances. All right, number 17 on the list is Mike Bloomgren from Rice. This is a guy, too, that just hadn't worked out. Still the head coach at Rice University. 4 years, 11-31 over those 4 years. 2-11, 3-9, 2-3, and 4-8. So I guess I can say, well, we had our best year last year. If they don't win this year, this guy's gone. And he's got a great pedigree, too. He was a GA at Alabama, even spent some time at Delta State. How about that? Then he was QC with the Jets, eventually became an assistant coach, went to Stanford, coached the offensive line, became offensive coordinator, associate head coach, had a good program. And now he's at Rice and just hadn't worked out. So that's another guy, again, he makes the list, and the guy's on a hot seat this year. All right, the number 18 guy on the list is Sean Lewis at Kent State. He had previously been the co-offensive coordinator at Syracuse. It hadn't gone exceptionally well for him, but probably not as bad as some others. 2-10 the first year, 7-6, then 3-1, of course, because the MAC didn't play a full schedule. And then 7-7 last year. They go 7-6 in a regular season, and then lose the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. So they're maybe trending in the right direction. They can't afford to take a step back this year. If they do, you're probably going to see a coaching change there. I don't know how Kent State, how committed they are, even though Nick Saban's an alum there. But the Golden Flash is not exactly a big power, even in the MAC. Number 19, Chad Lunsford was hired at Georgia Southern. He was recently replaced by, of course, Todd Helton. But a guy that just didn't get it done. He's now the tight ends coach at Florida Atlantic, working with Willie Taggart, a guy that has made a lot of money and coached a lot of bad football. But 5 seasons there, he was, I guess, the interim coach. They elevated him in 17. They coached him to a 2-4 record. They elected to stay in-house. He responds in 18 with a 10-3 record. And then they win the Camellia Bowl. And then it's 7-6, 8-5, and then 1-3. And then they make a change last year. Of course, Jared Banco and those guys are running the show down there now. But, I don't know all the details behind this. But, again, he's a winning coach. And maybe I misspoke a little bit earlier. But 28-21. And, he's done. They fired him after 4 games last year. And it seems like I remember there was some type of scandal. It was something that went along with that. I'm not going to go ahead and dig through all that because, we're not that, we we're not that interested, shall we say. We're wishing the best for Benko and those guys, but they made a change last year, and it seemed like there was some off-the-field issues. Number 20, Dana Dimel at UTEP, former Kansas State offensive coordinator. And this is a guy that's had some head coaching experience too. Former head coach at Wisconsin, had 3 winning seasons there, and then took the job at Houston, and it was an absolute disaster there. 3-8, 0-11, 5-7. Goes 8-26 in Houston. Spends some time kind of working his way back up the ranks. Was a GA at Kansas, even though he'd had all these other issues. And then became a tight ends coach at Arizona, kind of reunited with Kevin Sumlin there. And then goes to Kansas State and then gets a job at UTEP. And it's been interesting. 1-11, 3-5. Last year they're 7-6. They go 7-5 in the regular season and lose the New Mexico Bowl. But again, kind of an upward trajectory. It's taken some time. They bottomed out. And we'll kind of see how things progress there. But again, that's another guy too, arguably on the hot seat this year. The final guy on the list is Herm Edwards. Now, Herm has not had maybe the losses some other teams have, but they're about to get hit with NCAA sanctions. And again, staffers involved in all this. Herm got the job. People kind of pan the hire. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. He goes 7-6. They lose the bowl game. They go 8-5 the next year, win the Sun Bowl, 2-2 in 2020. And in 2021, they go 8-5, and they lose the Las Vegas Bowl. So an 8-4 regular season, so you feel like, hey, the Sun Devils are actually playing pretty well. But what's going to happen with all these sanctions? And, Herm doesn't need the money. But, again, he's the bottom guy on the list. And if you are able to get around that scandal, I think you look at all this. And what's interesting, Athlon rated it as a D- higher. It goes to show you just never know. And so you go back and look at this, man, a lot of these guys that were hired just 4 years ago are no longer at their current positions. Many of them fired. A couple of them have just taken other jobs, like Billy Napier. But it's interesting to look back in hindsight at this, quote, great coaching class and to see how they've done just 4 years in. And most of them fired. Pretty crazy. So I say all that to say this. Hiring a head football coach is very difficult. There is no question about it. It is very, very difficult. And there were a lot of people that are like, hey, Steve, we should have done this, should have done that. We hired Joe, and on paper it seemed like a great hire. Some people had called him the number 1 assistant coach in the country. And it didn't work out for us. You never know what you don't know until you realize, I wish I had known that. But I would venture to say we would probably have, if we had hired some of these other guys, we probably would be in the same position. I think in hindsight you look back and say, you know what, this really was a terrible coaching hire class. And a lot of these guys were overhyped. A lot of that comes from agents. Chad Morris is a guy that had struggled winning anywhere. And then all of a sudden he got a Power 5 job in the SEC. Takes 2 years to figure it out. But again, you look at this in hindsight with the gift of hindsight, and all of a sudden you realize this is a very difficult thing to do. Sometimes they're easy decisions to make, but when you're out there trying to replace a guy like Dan Mullen, it's like, let's go get an up-and-comer. Let's go get the next Dan Mullen. Didn't work out for us. But again, at the end of the day, we got 2 Egg Bowl wins and 2 bowl appearances, and I like to win those games too. I don't want to just take the trip. If we're going to pack the car and put miles on our vehicles, let's go out there and come home with something. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by our friends at Portico. Brooks Bryan is my friend, and I'm proud to call him a friend. Brooks played really hard for us at Mississippi State. Played on a pair of Omaha teams, got to know what it takes to win, understands the grind of the SEC schedule. Brooks now trying to make Starkville and Mississippi State a better place to live in and around. Part of a great group bringing this wonderful residential development to Portico. Now, your new neighbors are already there. Phase 1's completely sold out. Phase 2 under construction now. Got a couple of those houses sold. There are some houses being constructed that are available for purchase now. And maybe you can go ahead and reach a deal. Or you're thinking, you know what, Steve, we've got some unique needs. I've got to have a home office. I've got to have this, got to have that. They can do a custom build for you. You can go a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. You'd be glad you did. Many of you have dreamed of having a place in Starkville, even if it's not your primary residence. Maybe it's your ballgame weekend retreat. Perhaps it's your future retirement home. You're thinking, you know what, hey, it's not going to be too much longer, and I want to retire to Starkville because I want to go to all the games. And we want you to be here. I don't want to have to wait for a table at Bulldog Burger when you come, but But the reality of it is Starkville's a growing area. There's no better place to live than Portico. Give Brooks a call today at 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. He'll answer all your questions. Easy access to 82, 12, and 25. You're on the quiet side of campus. You're 1.1 miles away from the Bulldog campus. I mean, you're within shouting distance of Duty Noble Field. How cool would that be, right? Make your dream a reality. Make Portico your next move. All right, in the last few minutes we have together, I want to talk about kind of the linchpin in this whole conference realignment thing. And there are still a lot of discussions being had. You know, like right now, some people have put out, we're just kind of going to stand pat what we got. I think a part of that, too, is because the season is now approaching. You know, we're in media days now. We're getting ready to start fall camp. And so now is probably not the time to talk about any future moves. Now, that's not to say that something couldn't happen. But I think by and large, everybody's like, let's just kind of hold pat what we have, and we'll get through the season. And so I think probably early next year, you'll start hearing this stuff chirp up again. Now, the linchpin in the whole thing is Notre Dame. There's no question about it. And so they're the coveted free agent. Independent. They probably need some conference affiliation to kind of help themselves rather than be the outlier out there trying to get into the playoff discussions. There's nobody out there really pushing for them. But let's be honest with ourselves. There is not a more significant national brand in college football than Notre Dame. You all watch Rudy. You know about Touchdown Jesus. We've all dreamed of doing a home-and-home with them. We'd love to see the Golden Helmets in Davis-Wade Stadium. We'd love to go up there and play. We'd love to. And everybody would. It's difficult to get those games. Mike Nemeth has told me, hey, we inquired. It was tough. Couldn't get it done. Notre Dame is kind of their own thing. And so what value do they bring to a TV deal? The Big Ten deal, people talk about how big the SEC deal is. The Big Ten makes a ton of money too. And so I think right now you look at it, Notre Dame, it makes sense for them to join the Big Ten geographically. It makes sense for them financially. You know, they're not going to go join the Pac-12. You know, the ACC would love to have them. Of course, they have them on the non-football side of things. They'd love to have them because I think the ACC is about to get gutted too, and I think Notre Dame sees that. I think Notre Dame thinks, okay, well, what if we go to the ACC and then Florida State and Clemson bolt for the SEC? Well, yes, our path to the playoff is probably somewhat easier, but at the end of the day, what about the prestige of the conference? Is that the right move for us? And then all of a sudden, rather than playing Michigan and Stanford and Ohio State, we're playing Virginia Tech. You know, that kind of stuff. And so what if the SEC made a move? What if the SEC said, hey, let's go get Notre Dame? And I know geographically that's removed. You know, look at what, you know, it's happening with the Big Ten where they're going to get in the LA market with SC and UCLA. Now, Notre Dame may not want any part of an SEC football schedule. I'm going to say, you know what? It's just too difficult. I'd rather go up here and be able to play Michigan and Ohio State, and then also, too, I get the chance to play, Northwestern. Notre Dame may look at the Big Ten as the easier, softer way. But I think when you look at it financially, what if the SEC could say, hey, listen, if we add Notre Dame to our TV package, we could probably renegotiate this and kind of narrow the gap in many respects between us and the Big Ten on this TV package deal. It's crazy to think about that. I mean, Notre Dame has a national following, an absolute national following. And not to mention, instead of us having to go out and schedule a non-conference game with Notre Dame, then all of a sudden, maybe every few years, we'd get a chance to go to South Bend. You'd be willing to make that trip, wouldn't you? I would. I mean, if you're a fan of college football, haven't you always thought, man, how cool would it be to be able to go watch my team play, Notre Dame? I mean, it'd be fun to go to Notre Dame to watch them play anybody, but they didn't go watch the Bulldogs show up there and play. We've never played them. It'd be a unique, once-in-a-lifetime type experience for many people, but all of a sudden, if they joined our conference, we're going up there. And then I think about them on the baseball side, and I do think they'll take a step back with Link Jarrett moving on. But the reality of it is that, they need some strength in other sports too. And I think that's where the SEC might make some sense. Now, does that mean that State can get them? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the SEC can go out there and make this deal happen. I think you got to try, though. I think because if you allow Notre Dame to go to the Big Ten, all of a sudden their TV package increases too. But if we can go get them, our TV package increases. And you can say, yeah, Steve, but there's this and there's that. Listen, yeah, Clemson is going to bring some eyeballs, but listen, people in South Carolina are already watching these games. You can say, well, Florida State, yeah, but people in Florida are already watching this. I mean, how many people in Indiana are watching our games? And how many people nationally? I mean, you ride all over the country, you see people with Notre Dame license plates or bumper stickers and things like that. They're a national brand. There'll be the novelty of the whole thing too. Oh, Notre Dame's going to play Alabama every 3 years. Notre Dame is going to play Georgia. You don't think there'll be national intrigue in those games? And so I think, we always talk about you got to find a way to improve your standing. You can't just be happy with the status quo. I think Greg Sankey should go pursue Notre Dame. Again, I don't know that we can get them, but I think we can put a package together to maybe make this thing lucrative for them and lucrative for ourselves. Because the value of that TV package is going to be tremendously higher than what it is right now. As great as it is, think about if you added Notre Dame and all those tens of millions of TV sets right now that you're not tapping into. ESPN, to me, I think ESPN probably benefits from this as much as anybody. I think if you're Greg Sankey, you absolutely have to make that deal. You have to make it. They're the team, right? That's who everybody wants. And there's all this discussion that Notre Dame may go to the Big Ten and bring Stanford with them. And that'd be big, it'd be huge for the Big Ten. Huge. And I think in many respects for years we kind of looked at the ACC as our rival, in some ways the Big 12 a little bit. Big 12 has kind of fallen off in recent years, even though we do appreciate their contributions in 2020 to keep the game alive. But when you begin to look at like TV revenue, the Big Ten, that's who we're competing against. And so if we can find a way to maybe narrow the gap and then diminish their TV package, we got to do that. Even if we got to make a deal that maybe isn't traditionally what you would do. I think maybe it's a tough sell in the league, but I think when you begin to think about the economics of it all, and we all know this, I mean, your money moves everything around me, right? Wu-Tang forever. That's the best business decision. It's just a matter of can you get it done. And again, I don't think anything happens, and I may turn the show off and get on Twitter, and all of a sudden there's movement. But I think now that we're settling into media days, I think everybody's like, you know what, let's focus on what's in front of us, and then we can revisit this issue, after the turn of the year. But we're not done. We're not done expanding. And a lot of people have said, but Steve, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. Listen, guys, I'm not worried about Mississippi State getting left out of anything. I think it takes, a 75% vote to vote us out. And that would require some other people like Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is linked to us. If they'll vote us out, they'll vote you out too. Kentucky gets to hang around for basketball. But when you start kind of looking at this thing, if you want these super football conferences, everybody can't go 10-0. And that's the thing that I think people understand too. It's like, hey, so we're going to do a super conference, and it's going to be, it's going to be Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, LSU. All right, well, then you're going to play each other head-to-head all the time. Somebody's going 4-8. So how is that a good deal for them? You got to think, okay, well, we probably need Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss in this thing too. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have some prestigious programs. They're going to go be 6-6, 7-5. Would their fans be happy being part of a super conference then? When you're not winning, and all of a sudden you take a traditional powerhouse, a blue blood, and all of a sudden they're a mediocre team. So, it makes sense. I'm not worried about it. Of course, if we change leadership in the SEC, which, thankfully Greg Sankey is healthy and doing a good job, we might have to reconsider some things then. I think as long as Greg Sankey is there, I think what we need to happen is Greg Sankey to remain the commissioner through this game of musical chairs. We need to make sure that he's around for a decade or so. And so
And again, I just don't have those same feelings of panic that some of you do. And I know there's some people in the national media that love to fan that stuff. There's no point paying attention to that. All right, listen, if you hadn't done so, go to dogpilebook.com. The second printing now available. First printing totally sold out. And I know that baseball maybe was a little bit disappointing this year. So maybe go back and revisit our NAFL championship season. And it'll stir up these feelings of emotion, get you really excited about the future of Mississippi State baseball. And many of you are like, oh, well, Ole Miss won. It kind of diminishes. It doesn't diminish anything. We have our championship. They have our championship. They earned it. We earned ours. But maybe reading that book will help you kind of deal with some of that. I had somebody message me yesterday. I said, Steve, I just finished up Dogpile, and I love how you focused on every player and not just the stars. And I did, because they all contributed. And I loved writing that book. If you haven't got a copy, you should. And again, Stark Villains and Alpha Dogs, quantities very, very, very low. Very low. Had somebody hit me up over the weekend, said, Steve, I need to get my dad a copy of Stark Villains. Is it too late? There might be a dozen or so, and that's not hyperbole. Maybe 20 or so. And what happens is, we'll sell 4 or 5 of those a week. And, of course, that book is 3-4 years old now. But if you're wanting to get it and have it, you probably need to make a move now. And that's Alpha Dogs and Stark Villains. We still have we probably got, a few hundred flim-flam. And, of course, we got, a lot of available stock of Dogpile. That second printing now in. So be sure and order that. You got friends that have interest in Mississippi State. Maybe you wanted to buy them a housewarming gift. Get them a coffee table book. Get them some of my books. I think it'd be great. I think every Mississippi State home should have those. You should read them, but even if you don't read, you're not going to have a better decoration than that, right? If you're looking for Blooms of Oleander, you can find it. Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, or through your local bookstore. Stark Villains gear, we got some cool stuff coming up with that too. StarkVillains.com, you can get yourself Stark Villains gear shipped directly to your home. All right, that's it for today. Happy to get a show up for you guys before the day got too deep. We had to get it done before the draft. And so we're back on Wednesday to recap the draft, recap what we learned at SEC Media Days, and then Friday, we're going to begin our SEC football previews for the year. Excited about that. Excited to kind of look and see what everybody has. And eager to get into football camp, too. We'll have Top Dog Camp coming up in 11 days. So Paul Jones and I, Robbie Falk, will be out there kind of working through that and looking forward to being back out there, the final summer camp of this recruiting cycle. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends and enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
Hey, remember how 20 years ago I switched to Progressive? Well, now it's the future, and I used all those savings to buy this new hologram phone. Because, it's the future, and everything is holograms now.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customer surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.